What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. It's time to finish up my specific update 1.43 car reviews, this time with the Audi TTS from 2009. There will be a bit of a bonus review, as we all know the Bulgari kind of made its entrance for 99.9% of the players, but that one was kind of from 1.42. But today we are going to focus on this car right here, making its return for the first time since Gran Turismo 6, also featured in Gran Turismo 5, so let's see how it features in GT7. Now this is again one of the rare occasions where a vehicle will be both in the used car dealership as well as brand central as well, so you can pick it up for a little bit cheaper from used car dealer, but it will have some mileage on it and such like that, or you can pick it up brand new for, funnily enough, the same price that it cost for both GT5 and GT6. It's one of those cars that hasn't gone up or down in any price whatsoever when featuring in GT7. 68,000 credits for it brand new, so only a slight difference, and I would recommend just going for a new one considering the minor difference in price and the fact that this one will feature no mileage. But it's time to go ahead and review the car itself, and you may have seen from the title that in my honest opinion this car is a little bit fun but also a little bit flawed. It really is a bit of a mixed bag. I would say its weakest iteration is going to be in its standard form. It has this very strange characteristic, although it's four-wheel drive and should naturally be very grippy. As soon as you apply those brakes, this thing is going to want to skit around and move around like there is nothing else to it. It really does feel like a bit of a strange car. You expect this one to be relatively stable. Not going to happen, to be totally honest. It's just not that great to drive in its standard form. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad car overall, which I'll talk about a little bit more later down the line, but definitely in its standard form this is going to be probably the worst way to actually experience this car. And I would recommend, if you want to get more time with it and kind of go into a better version of it, definitely start sticking those upgrades on as soon as you buy this thing. Typically, I find four-wheel drive cars in GT7 relatively easy to drive. They're obviously going to be some of the easiest in the game, and even ones with much more power output than we're seeing with the Audi TTS here, they are relatively overall very, very simple and easy cars to drive. They don't have any odd characteristics to them. They'll typically have a lot of grip, a lot of acceleration, and overall very, very good track performance. But I feel like this is one of the rare occasions where overall, because of how much this car dances about under braking and you're trying to throw it around the corners as clean as possible, it kind of takes away from that experience. So like I said, for me overall I'd say performance is good but certainly not great. It feels absolutely fantastic blasting away from the corners, that typical four-wheel drive I guess characteristic where you're going to get a ton of acceleration. Top speed is much better than I originally expected. I honestly thought this car would be slower than it originally I guess kind of gave away, but it wasn't. It was much better and exceeded my expectations there. But definitely in terms of braking and handling characteristics, the Audi TTS in its standard form is certainly not one for me. It really wasn't the most enjoyable lap that I've ever put in at the Nordschleife. I found myself getting frustrated with the car throughout, and again when I've tested it elsewhere it just suffers from the same issue. Again, maybe it's just me, but let me know down below if you guys have felt that it's kind of the same, where it'll dance around under braking and then sort of twitch its rear end instead of having that very typical grip. It's something that's not shared with the likes of the Evo 9, which is also four-wheel drive and featured alongside the update 1.43 as well. So again, maybe it's just me, but I'm pretty sure that some of you guys out there would have experienced this as well. So definitely not the most pleasant car to drive, definitely not the most pleasant car to try and get it, the speed down with, but overall it is okay. Certainly not up there as one of my favorites, and I think overall in terms of the car itself, which I'll go on to now, I feel like it's probably one of the most uninspired cars that we've ever received in an update. While something like the Renault 4 can be relatively quirky and I guess enjoyable to look at and enjoyable to experience because it's just such an oddball, and things like the Evo 9 and LFA and such like that, very much requested cars, I don't really feel like anybody really wanted this car to come back. But again, it kind of sits in the fact that it just fills that generational gap and gives gives us every iteration of the Audi TT in game. But for me personally, it's always going to be about that original generation of Audi TT. That is my firm favourite of the bunch. I feel like after that they just went a bit too big, a bit too bulbous and kind of in your face, and I just kind of feel like the styling was lost. Originally it was a very nice and original design, and then kind of as it's gone on through different generations, like the second one here and the third one, whilst they do have that typical Audi TT look, it just feels like they put a bunch of, I guess, extra weight on it and it forgot to go to the gym. However, the Audi TTS does have a bit of a hidden card up its sleeve, and that is going to be upgrades, and not only just the performance upgrades but cosmetic as well. It really does feature some fantastic cosmetic upgrades, the ability to change the grille, that huge DTM rear wing, and again in terms of performance, once you get those upgrades on and you start absolutely nailing this build, I feel like this car really does come alive and begin earning that spot in GT7. Again, it's one of those cars that whilst at first, from first glance and, you know, I guess first drive of it, you might not be a fan of, but once you start digging into the upgrades, once you start building it, and once you start getting used to it, this car absolutely becomes a whole different type of monster. Again, a bit of a DTM Cup car, little track rocket, and I really do enjoy it, but standard form, definitely not for me. In terms of the overall PP category it sits in is 600, and it's going to come at last place. As you can see, both of the latest cars from 143 sit in here, and both of them come straight at the bottom. But the Audi is definitely going to be much slower on track in its standard form, even with that slight extra PP rating. A time of 8 minutes 1 second .109 puts it dead last in the 600 category, just below the Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution 9, which came in with a time in the 7 minutes. Now, I did mention that in terms of the upgraded version, it is a completely different beast, and I will fully stand by that. Not only does it make the car look much better and give it a lot more life into what is relatively a dull car in my opinion, it makes it a much better track ready beast as well. Again, going for that kind of DTM Cup look, this thing absolutely transforms itself, which I can really appreciate compared to what, like I said, is a very boring original car. So let's talk about it fully upgraded, because this is where most of you guys are going to be using it. You can pretty much hit those maximum PP ratings whilst being able to make the car usable, which again, credit to the car, just like the Evo as well, where it can be a very balanced and very fully upgraded car whilst absolutely smashing out plenty of money grinds and plenty of other racers, especially within that 700 PP category. Again, couple that with that four-wheel drive and the extra downforce that this car needs, and it completely transforms itself into an entirely different car. Not only do I really like the styling with the extra wide body, the big wing, and it gives it that typical race car look, I really do enjoy the performance. Again, it feels like once you've got that suspension kind of absolutely nailed in, and once you couple that with a four-wheel drive and plenty of upgrades for the top speed, this car really does start to shine. I really enjoy this vehicle in this form. Again, it's probably the way that most of you guys are going to run it, and I fully back that up. If you want to run this car and you want to have a lot of fun with it, then definitely run it in a fully upgraded form. Again, you'll probably only need a slight drop in some of the aero to get it to absolutely nail those 700 PP events. I'm currently working on my build, which will hopefully be out tomorrow, but overall this is a much better car when you've got those upgrades on. In terms of the overall rating now, it's nothing too mind-blowing to be fair. It sits at 718.01 pp on racing softs with maximum upgrades on, which is still slower than some cars around it. Again, from update 1.43, the Lancer sits overall in 12th, where the Audi sits 16th, and it sits just below the Honda Civic Type R FL5, which came a few updates prior. Not too far off though, and sits in a nice middle ground just in front of some other relatively quick cars as well. So, the TTS, a bit of an oddball, not the most interesting car, perhaps the least interesting of this update, but certainly once you start getting those upgrades on and once you start absolutely nailing your builds, you can have fun with this car. For me, it's fun, but it's very much a flawed vehicle until you absolutely nail it down. But it is great to see it return, and it does complete all generations of Audi TT in GT7. Massive thank you to all of my members: Wigberto, Mystics, J Rowe, Victory 2FA, Mailton, Louis Vieira, Old School Gamers, Crazy Cobra, Carl Wyatt, Phil Wilmot, Dominic Saylor, Dan, Sean, and Chris75572. Thank you for your continued support. I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Peace.